Imagine a life without telephones. What would our society look like? What relationship did the invention of the phone have on the sociological impact of our society? What impact did the invention of the phone have on orality and writing? These are all questions that will be answered during this presentation. To begin, we need to start with the inventor himself. Alexander Graham Bell, born March 3, 1847, initially was a teacher of the deaf, as his father was responsible for inventing a system called visible speech. Visible speech was a method that taught the deaf how to speak, and as such, Bell shared a passion in studying the phenomena of sounds. It was this initial interest that later helped Bell in the invention of the telephone. Bell, at 18, experimented with tuning forks and came to the realization that shaping his mouth in certain ways produced different sounds, now referred to as overtones. He did not know it at the time, but he was duplicating the research done by a man named Hermann von Helmholtz. After continuing to study and work with overtones, and coming to the realization that he was mimicking Helmholtz's work, he realized that Helmholtz was in fact sending vowel sounds along telegraph wires. Bell then decided to make his own telegraph with the idea of sending sounds over it once completed. Bell saw a need in the market for something to replace the telegraph, as the number of wires being run throughout cities was becoming astronomical. It was hard to keep up with the demand of the telegraph, and thus Bell decided he would fix this problem. As a bonus, Western Union stated they would give $1 million to anyone who could lessen the congestion of the telegraph lines. They specifically said to do this by inventing a way for telegraph lines to carry more than one message at the same time. With the help of Thomas A. Watson, Bell's assistant, two machines derived from the tuning forks experiment were used to make a harmonic multiple telegraph. Bell realized that in order to send multiple messages over the same wire, they had to have different pitches. Just as moving one's mouth to create different pitches with the tuning fork had done, Bell intended on utilizing this idea to create his harmonic multiple telegraph. His knowledge of acoustics helped greatly in this endeavor. Bell understood the importance of speaking telegraphy as he was a teacher of the deaf. Gardner Hubbard was his primary financial backer and later his father-in-law. Bell used three multiple telegraph stations, A, B, and C. He wanted to pluck the first string, or reed, on station A, think of a harp, and have the first string in B and C vibrate, thus showing a successful transmission. What did happen was that the reed in station C was stuck, which produced the same sound of all reeds ringing on all three stations. While this was an error, it helped Bell to understand how sound transmission occurred, and what needed to be done to transmit speech. As such, he requested a patent for a telegraph that included the transmission of speech. Bell's invention of the speaking telegraph, or the telephone, was a form of remediation as he was making a new form of media from an existing form, the telegraph. Unbeknownst to Bell, Alicia Gray had, only a couple of hours later, requested a patent for the same device, a speaking telegraph. After plenty of litigation, it was deemed that Bell's patent would go through, as he was a couple of hours earlier than Gray. On March 7, 1976, Bell received his patent, despite the fact that he had not yet successfully transmitted speech. On March 10, 1876, Bell uttered the famous words, "Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you." Thomas Edison was also in the running to be the inventor of the telephone, with his own ideas. Western Union backed Edison and decided to give him the $100,000 prize for solving the problem of telegraph wires. However, after years in court, Western Union settled with the Bell Telephone Company for 20% royalty of whatever Bell would make, as Bell had been the first to place a patent. Regardless of the history of the telephone, it is clear that the invention forever changed society. Society shifted to a state of secondary orality, as Walter Ong suggests. Secondary orality allows for a sense of community, and as such, provides us with richer interactions. Without a doubt, the invention of the telephone changed how we interact with each other. When the telephone first became available to customers, multiple families or community members shared the same line as a means of saving money. As such, if one wanted to call someone, they would pick up the phone and wait to see if they heard someone else's voice. If they did, they would hang up and try again later. While a sense of privacy was lost if someone was listening in on the other side, it did help to create a sense of community. Where the invention of the telegraph allowed us to convey short phrases to one another, it drastically reduced the romance of the spoken word. With the invention of the telephone, we switched from a written society to an oral society. As orality stresses group learning, cooperation, and a sense of social responsibility, so did the invention of the telephone. With the spoken language, we are able to communicate our ideas, thoughts, to another being with little effort, as opposed to the process of writing and reading in, for example, the telegraph. Both men and women could use a telegraph to find out any alerts that were occurring, for example, a fire alert, sports results, or even baby lullabies. As such, the invention of the telephone modified the social structures of obtaining information and knowledge. No longer were people required to go visit their local communities to find out information, but could now call in and obtain the information they needed with little effort. Social ramifications also included speedy doctor visits in which one could pick up the phone and ask for a doctor to come to their house. This took, in some cases, hours off the tenuous task and saved many lives. Alexander Graham Bell's invention of the telephone changed the pace in which individuals can send and receive information. In the 1930s, teaching by the telephone became popular phenomena that aimed to educate those who were unable to attend school for one reason or another, whether that may be an illness, distance, or otherwise. While teaching by the telephone helped immensely in reaching learners otherwise unable to attend school, it also came with a significantly high cost of operation. Later, teaching by telephone would advance greatly. However, it was this initiative that started the process of learning by other means than face-to-face interactions. The world's communication levels were significantly improved upon with the invention of the telephone. No longer was it incredibly difficult to communicate with soldiers in war as it once was. Women and men at home no longer needed to wait for a telegraph to be sent and then return to them with days and months of anticipation and fear. While communication of people with distance between them changed from the written word to the spoken or oral word, language became much more casual. Conversations over the phone could not be replayed unless someone were to scribe them. As such, brains were being used in different capacities, as we now had to retain the information being told as opposed to having a written reference to refer to, such as a telegraph. As Walter Ong states, secondary orality and the invention of the telephone has encouraged us to concentrate on the present moment. Try to imagine what our present moments will look like in the future and what strides have been made in writing and orality. Overall, the invention of the telephone proved immense changes in society, including education, both for the written and spoken word, and overall made communication much simpler.